Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Using AI to Power the Modern SOC, hosted by Ironbow Technologies in collaboration with our partners at Palo Alto Networks. I'm Cory Jackson, Technical Director of Cybersecurity in the CTO organization here at Ironbow Technologies. And presenting with me is Chen, Channel Systems Engineer for Palo Alto Networks. We're thrilled to have you here as we dive into the transformative impact of artificial intelligence on the Modern Security Operations Center, or SOCs. So let me start with a quick introduction to Ironbow Technologies. Our mission is all about transforming technology investments into impactful business capabilities and positive outcomes for our clients across government, commercial, and the healthcare sectors. We're headquartered in Hearn, Virginia. We have a national footprint and a global reach, enabling us to support clients with our vast network of expertise. Ironbow is well over $1 billion revenue organization with a team of over 1,000 employees, and the majority of those individuals are technical specialists and client-facing. Our ISO and FISMA certifications, among many others, reflect our commitment to quality and security as we address the critical needs of our clients. At Ironbow, we cover a broad spectrum of technology services, from IT modernization to digital transformation. We bridge a gap between business and technology with our services that prioritize workforce and user experience. And in cybersecurity, we are deeply committed to fortifying data and systems, driving foundational technology advancements, through cloud modernization, edge computing, and innovative workspace platforms. We also specialize in areas such as DevOps, DevSecOps, infrastructure as code, cloud native architectures, and zero trust. And these focuses shape our services and allow us to deliver custom end-to-end solutions that respond to our customers' needs. Cybersecurity is one of Ironbow's core technology pillars, and with capabilities that span implementation services, managed services, and advisory services. And in fact, today's discussion of AI-powered SOCs directly aligns with our commitment to enhance threat monitoring, detection, and response capabilities. And by leveraging AI, we're able to automate, streamline detection processes, and enable SOC teams to respond faster and more accurately to incidents. And this shift allows us to move beyond traditional cybersecurity models and be more proactive and address threats in real time. And today you'll hear about specific use cases and real-world examples and tools and techniques and technologies that make a difference in SOC environments. And Aaron will share insights into how AI-powered solutions are transforming SOC operations. And as far as our native Ironbow cybersecurity capabilities, they're broken up into kind of 3 buckets. We have our technology services, which are our implementation services, traditional professional services, deploying security technologies, helping customers develop architectures through workshops, and doing proof of concept and proof of value. We have our managed services, our threat and vulnerability management capabilities, which consist of managed detection and response, VSOC, penetration testing, and tabletop exercises. And then we have our advisory services, which is focused on data governance, risk assessment, and readiness, in addition to our VSOC services, or vCISO services, sorry. So we encourage you to engage with us throughout the session. Feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A feature in the chat, and we'll address as many of those as we can during the presentation. If we can't answer it during the presentation, we will follow up afterwards. We're here to make this as interactive and informative as possible, so please don't hesitate to participate. So let's dive into our topic. Aaron from Palo Alto Networks is going to kick things off by exploring foundations in AI and SOC environments and how these advancements are reshaping cybersecurity as we know it. So with that, over to you, Aaron.
All right, sounds good. Let me share my screen here. All right. Are you still there?
I'm here.
All right. My screen's coming through all right?
Yep, everything's looking good.
All right, cool. Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Chen. I'm the Cortex Partner Development Engineer here supporting Ironbow. So I'm going to give you guys a virtual SOC tour, if you want to call it that, right? And kind of call out how some of the products, some of the histories behind our SOC and how it really transformed us over the last few years. So let's get things started here. So to really kick it off, right? So a little bit about what our SOC is and what is not. So the Palo SOC is, it's internal, right? It's not an MSSP. It doesn't look at customer data, right? So it's just like any other SOC, right? That you would imagine out there. We support our own people at our own infrastructure, right? So at a very high level, those guys are responsible for threat monitoring, threat hunting, incident response. And, there's a lot of smart people over at Palo, right? But 99% of investigations and IR are done within the SOC. Not to say the SOC people are not smart. They are really smart as well. Didn't mean to, come out that way, but they are pretty self-sufficient. They really need help outside of their own their own organization there. But over the last few years, right, just like any other SOC, here and there they're going to need help. So they often partner with Unit 42, which is Palo's incident response team, right? So Unit 42 is in a lot of cyber insurance panelists and stuff like that. So they did leverage those guys, not because they got breached. So there were some really high profile stuff like SolarWinds, Log4j. You probably heard it on the media over the last few years, right? So they did ping those guys to get like forensic data, right? Potential malware samples and things like that, just to get ahead of the curve, right? So all in all, right, the SOC is part of InfoSec department here at Palo. And aside from Unit 42, where they try to get help when they need to, right? But that's pretty rare. I would say, 99% of all they do are, internal to themselves. They do also contribute and partner with other teams as well. So with, security engineering, right? So they would advise our networking folks on how to build security, into the internal network and the architecture. They also work with the product team as well, right? So as they learn something, right, they also would provide feedback into, into the product team so that it can be, improved, and then so that our customers, right, can consume a little bit better, right? So basically becoming a, better citizen. And the same thing like our customers, just like when you log in, when you install, when you deploy any Palo product, right? You have the option to provide telemetry into, into Palo, or you can, you don't have to, right? That's an option. So obviously those guys have that enabled. And then lastly, they also partner with a lot of governance, risk, compliance people, right? Make sure everything that we do are in compliance with the regulations and things like that. But all in all, right, Palo today, I would say, this is a little dated, right? We're close to 20,000 employees now, right? Serving over 85,000 customers around the globe. We have 700 workloads, physical and virtual instance in the cloud, right? And that's, that's across the board within Palo, and 8 data centers, and plus all the public cloud, right? So we're a big consumer of Google GCP, right? But we also have resources over in AWS and Azure as well. So, with that sizable company like Palo, right? There are really only 27 full-time employees. And geographically, majority of those guys are in North America, and there's also an office, right, in Europe as well. So when we break this down, there are half of them, roughly 13 of them are what you think of as traditional SOC analysts, right? As you would imagine, a SOC analyst looking at screens and things like that, right? So we got 13 of those guys. They deal with, the alerts, triaging, right? Incident response, threat hunting, right? So those are the core guys that goes in threat hunt. Now there's a bunch of guys, half of them are playing a supporting role, right? So 5 of those guys are doing automation development, right? So basically making our machines, making our AIs a lot smarter so that those guys who are doing the hunt don't have to do as much hunting, or or presenting to them when they see an incident, right? It's already populated with things that they would do normally anyways, right? So automating a lot of that stuff. We got a few engineers, 3 on logging and data management, make sure we're feeding in, right? All the data that needs to get analyzed, because we certainly don't want to miss anything, right? Looking at all the blind spots and things like that. And then there is data loss prevention, right? Which is also part of the SOC, not really for security, but for the DLP, for data leakage and things like that. And then there is one attacker disruption. This guy is really cool. So he plays the role of kind of like the bad guy, right? So he sets up honeypots, fake data, to lure potential attackers. And in collaboration with like pen testing, right? We, just like everybody else, we occasionally do red team, blue team exercises, right? So he would set out these honeypots to see if it lures and, see how accurate it is and things like that. But all in all, right, all these guys work together ultimately to find security holes, right? Vulnerabilities before, the bad guys do. So yeah, they're pretty mean and they're pretty lean, right? Because they cover a lot of, it's a big company, right? And they're not that big. So, and at the same time, when you look at the chart here, right? They don't cover 24/7, meaning like all these human beings, right? They're not eyes on screen all the time. So there are gaps in throughout the day. So they leverage automation during those gaps. So on average, right, we got about 5 high alerts on a daily basis. 4 of them usually happens during the time where a human analyst is able to handle that, right? So occasionally there will be pages that happens, if it's severe enough, right, or it looks serious enough, they will page somebody, right? So it's been working really well. And I've been with Palo for close to 1 year now. I started on December 1st of last year, right? So I had a real life story with the Palo SOC, right? About 6 months in, where I was in New York City and partnering with one of our guys over there to help them with their XDR lab. At the same time, I'm learning as well, right? So with me, I usually have a USB stick, right? Pretty old school, with some attack tools like Cobalt Strike, Kali, all the good stuff that I can use to generate logs, right? So obviously, being nervous, fairly new to the job, right? But I did not bring my USB stick, but I have everything on Mega Upload. So what I did was, not a problem, right? I can download it because it's encrypted, right? So nobody can see it, all of that good stuff. So, however, I made the mistake where when I was extracting that encrypted zip, basically the XDR agent on my machine picked that up, right? So immediately, because of the content of that zip, it's not malware, but it's attack tools, right? When you think of attack tools, bad guys use attack tools to deploy, ransomware and things, right? So it's kind of like it's bad, right? So immediately I got like email messages and Slack messages from InfoSec, right? From basically the SOC guys. So I have to explain to those guys, like, why am I doing this, right? I'm not a bad guy. These are not actual malwares, right? So I am an employee. So they forced like MFAs on me. and before they let me go, right? So I shared that with my teammates, and they were laughing at me. And then later on, I realized that all this interaction over Slack, I was actually dealing with, with our automation, and there's not a single person that, like a human being that I was interacting with. So it's really interesting. I was pretty impressed, coming in, having, experienced it, and I didn't get fired over it, which is good. But just wanted to share that as well. So that's our SOC, right? So a lot of it were handled by automation. Now the SOC has not really always been like this. It's not always automated, right? But they, over the last 8 years, they followed these guiding principles, really, right? So they want data, a lot of it, right? So think of data, think of all the events, everything that spits out a log, especially security logs and alerts, right? Think of them as like, finding a needle in a haystack, right? All these logs are haze, right? But in order to find the needles, right, you got to have the haystacks, because that's where that's where they're hidden, right? So we want data, really good data. And then of course, detections. We want good, accurate detection, so we don't waste our time on the false positives, right? Finding all the needles in the haystack. And then of course, automation to help do all of that stuff, right? So one of the key things that, I remember is that anything that is repeatable, especially in threat hunting, it should be automated. And machines are really good in repetitive stuff, right? So that's kind of the thing that, they've been following through and going through all of that stuff. So this is a kind of a like over the years of what really happened, right? Kind of the transition from a traditional SOC back in 2016 up until now, right? So they started in 2016, regular SOC, right? Mostly manual stuff. And they started messing around with SOAR, right? Security Orchestration Automation products. So they took on the Mistel, right? And they fell in love, right? Because it can do so much with SOAR and things like that. So they had a lot of influence with the product leaders. So instead of buying and subscribing to Mistel SOAR, right? They went ahead and bought the company, because they thought that, hey, you know what, this is something that we can, make money off of, right? So so they bought the Misto, which is now XSOAR, right? The product itself. That's how it came about. And then in 2019, that's when it really kicked off, right? So instead of using the Misto, they from there it was XSOAR. And then they ran it side by side with Splunk, right? So yeah, we were a Splunk customer, but they were really expensive, right? So XDR was processing, and doing all the protections and preventions and detections, and looking into Splunk for all the data and stuff, right? Pretty manual. They had to create a lot of detection rules, right? It's like, hey, you know what? I can save a lot of money going to Devo, right? So they dropped Splunk, go into Devo, because they do, pretty much do the same thing, right? Kind of do it yourself correlation rule things. So they created a lot of those. And then a couple of years ago in 2012, right? That's when XSIAM, right? The SOC transformation product that we have. So XSIAM basically took on the role of a SIM. It has all the features within XSOAR and XDR. So XSOAR and XDR are still there, right? Now we have XSIAM, kind of like a bundle solution, but in a single platform, right? Single management, single agent, all together in one product, right? And it has SIM as well, right? So we dropped Devo at that time, and then it was, those guys been using XSIAM ever since, right? To transform their SOC, because XSIAM's pretty awesome. 3,000 detections really out of the box. And there's really no need to create a lot of these detection rules. Anything that is shareable, right? If I need this detection and other customer need it too, right? It's out of the box, right? Palo would create those. So the SOC team, those engineers would go ahead and create rules that are more specific to the Palo environment. So over time, they did some math, right? XSIAM, it's such a transformational product that it's equivalent to the work of about 45 employees, right? Like human beings. So that's huge, right? So they didn't have to hire more people. They just have to make the product even better, because that would also translate into our customers who use XSIAM would also benefit from that, right? So really, it's all automation, it's AI, right? So it's all talking about playbooks, sub playbooks. Sub playbooks are huge. Sub playbooks are, think of them as like, playbook reuse, right? Like a template, where once an alert fires, right, the enrichment sub playbook basically kicks in. It speeds up the investigation, right? Because when a human analyst looks at an incident, right, it already has all the enrichments in there, meaning like this hash, this file, this URL, right? It's got all the reputation, right? The integrity of those files, have they been changed, right? Have I checked it with Wildfire? Have I checked it with VirusTotal? I can even correlate with third-party products like Proofpoint, right? Did this URL come in over email, right? All of that stuff is presented. There's no need to do all those digging, right? So enrichment is absolutely huge. And XSIAM also calculate like severities, right? Kind of prioritize it, right? If it's extremely high, they wouldn't even like put it on somebody's inbox, right, to review. They would just page somebody if it's really that high. So there's code reuse. The meaning of code here is not really like having to program stuff. It's awesome if you can, you know how to write Pythons and stuff like that, right? But most of our guys don't, they can, but they don't need to write Python scripts, right? So XOR, right? Thanks to XOR now is, it's part of XSIAM, right? So the way they write playbooks are mostly drag and drop, if and else statements, right? A lot of flowchart stuff. And again, it's repetitive, right? It also recommends playbooks as well, right? So it's pretty cool. So over the last 8 years, Palo has grown as far as employee counts, right? It has grown 5x. Security events and logs, right? Because we're bringing in, we want to do detection. We want to make sure that we don't miss all the needles in the haystack. So the haystack's gotten a lot bigger, right? 59 times, 59x. But the SOC team, only grew 2.5x, right? So it's a, pretty nice ratio. But really, the bottom line is that to save all these human worker hours, right? It's really outsourcing it to XSIAM, where it's doing all these detection rules on behalf of human beings, right? So before XSIAM, Palo SOC was creating all the detection rules, right? Whether it's Devo or Splunk. And then after they moved to XSIAM, right? All of that stuff is done, done on behalf of these threat researchers, right? So the SOC team really spends about 5% of the time creating detection rules that are specific to Palo, right? That's really not relevant to other customers. So it's very very accurate, very efficient, right? And all thanks to precision AI, like AI analytics, machine learnings, and things like that. So going back to the SOC and those guys, right? The security analysts and those folks, right? So they follow a dirty work model, right? So we don't want to get burnt out and then we have to hire new guys and things like that. We don't mind that. We have actually a couple of guys there, right? Where they move from being a SOC engineer to coming over to our team, right? The SC team, right? They move on to development, so they move within Palo. So they always, kind of new guys coming in, but they're not leaving Palo for the most part. So their dirty rule here is that 30% of what they do are reactive work, right? Traditional, looking at alerts, incidents, triaging, right? And then 30% of their time, it's proactive threat hunting, meaning this is not something that was detected or hinted, right? There's no IOC to this, right? But I have gotten this from, from other intelligence, right? Other things I have heard of. And I'm going to go and see if it's in my environment, right? So proactive threat hunting. And then 30% of their time is kind of tuning, tabletop exercises, purple team exercises, and things like that. And that leaves them about 10% to do whatever they want, like training, meetings, or whatever, right? So the key here is that, we want those guys to do more than just reviewing alerts, right? Not chasing ILCs all day. So additional metrics here, right? Kind of the before, the during, and then now, right? So when there was no automation, right, 2016, and then early automation in 2019, whereas today, we have a mature XIM environment where one product that replaced the SIM, XDR, XOR, attack surface management, and all those other stuff, right? There's a lot of tools that's built into XIM that I can't even explain. So they're bringing in a lot more alerts and things, right? So initially it was too little, and then there was a lot of automation that they're trying to make. So there's a lot of false positive, and now we're bringing it down to about 75 a day, right? And then logs. Logs is absolutely more complete now. We're bringing in a lot more hay so that we can find those needles. As far as detection, mean time to detect, this is typically what people use to measure SOC performance, right? How quickly can you detect the threat? So we shrunk that down significantly. It used to be, 2 days, down to 12 minutes, right? So think of that, right? So MTTD, think of an attacker, right? The dwell time within an organization has shrunk significantly, right? So it takes 2 days on average to find out an attacker, right? So if they can execute and get out of there within 2 days, they can, basically that's a breach. So we're making them a lot harder, right? So the detection time is 12 minutes. And then on the bottom, you also see MTTR, right? Basically the time to respond to it, right? And that is, basically automation here, plays a key role. So from 1 day down to 1 minute on average. So it's extremely huge. But also, full-time employee offset, right? Having a little automation, it's always good, but having great automation, makes it significantly better. So I think this might be my last slide. But this one kind of talks about the actual SecOps technology stack, right, here at Palo. So the bottom is where all the sensors, all the integrations, right? So this is all the hay on the very bottom here, right? The haystack, right? So there is one single agent. It shares the same technology as like XDR, so it's basically a very similar agent as our XDR, right? So it serves a very similar purpose, right? So it's a single agent that anything that you can install it on, meaning like like Windows, Mac, Kubernetes, Linux, right? It will be able to provide protection, detection, and response, right? So that's pretty basic. That's given, right? That's expected, and feeds into the data lake of XIM. And then on the networking side, of course, we use next-gen firewalls, right, from Palo. We have a lot of customers on that, and we also have an unfair advantage as well because it's coming from Palo's firewall onto Palo's XIM, right? So we have enhanced application log, things that you guys might know better than I do, is like, things that goes into Panorama, right? Having, that configuration, those log messages, like application IDs that maps to every application by name over the network, right? XIM gets a piece of that, right? There's also integration with Wildfire, the cloud sandboxing environment, for remote activities, right? Like remote access and things like that. There's, Prisma Access, right? That feeds into it. There's a bunch of third-party products that Palo uses as well. So, some of the key ones here are Proofpoint that secures our email. There's Tenable that we use for, vulnerability governance, right? Scannings and things, and Okta, right? For MFA. So all of those feeds into XIM's data lake. And from the cloud front, there's also Prisma Cloud, right? Our cloud security SaaS monitoring product, right? So Palo has data centers and storage in, very largely in Google Cloud, Azure, and AWS as well, right? So all of those, right, endpoint, network, cloud feeds into this single data lake. And then from there, precision AI, machine learning models stitch together all these events, right, that are related into a single incident, right? So think of incidents as like attack stories that has all the sources plugged in and presented to the incident responders, right, to the threat hunters for them to review. If it's something that XIM automation can resolve, right, it will do it automatically as well, right? So the interactions over Slack, over email, right? If it can resolve that, it will. On the left-hand side are kind of the threat intel, right? The TIMs of the world where, we can use to enrich the incident responses, right? So the first thing it would look at is like, let me check the validity, right? The integrity of this, right? Is this a real Microsoft application? Is this real Word? Is this real PowerPoint, right? So we can validate that, get reputations from multiple data sources. And then there's also Expanse, because Expanse is our attack surface management tool, right? That's also part of XSIAM. So Expanse came later on, where Expanse, we acquire a company called, I think it's Expanse. We just named it Expanse. They continues to continuously scans the internet. Think of it as like Google, right? They scan the internet. When you ask Google something, it will point you to the web page that has that information. Expanse does it a little differently, right? So it scans the internet, but it looks for specific to what we seed it with, right? Kind of like a search, but we will give it like, hey, you know what? Find everything that's related to Palo. This is Palo's domain. Here are some of the assets there, and Expanse's machine learning algorithm will basically kick in, right, and find out anything that is exposed to the internet that has information that belongs to Palo, right? So ultimately, what it's trying to get at is that, it provides a near real-time inventory list of every assets, everything, right? Like, certificates, IPs, devices that potentially has Palo information in it, right? And then from there, it feeds it into XSIAM. Now we have a full inventory list, right? Even things that the IT guys don't know about, because there's also shadow IT. Their developers don't really follow the best practices and stuff, right? So yeah, so that's Expanse. There's also integrations with like PagerDuty, all of that stuff, right? So yeah, so all right. So before we get on, I have a quick demo just to show you guys what XSIAM looks like. But Cory, do we have any questions before
Yeah,
we?
so there's one question in the chat for everyone, and then there are a couple of direct messages I got. So the first one from Dan is insider threat covered by your capabilities?
Yes, absolutely. Insider threat, shadow IT, those guys exist everywhere. Even though even our security guys, I would hate to admit that I, sometimes do it, but to what extent, right? So it's always there. Shadow IT, insider threats, right? So data loss prevention, we look at that as well. We have products that support that. XIM itself, I mean, you could have it go and look for certain things as well. But for the most part, right, Expanse that I just talked about, it's going to cover a lot of that stuff. So let's just say that a developer, they have access into AWS, GCP, right? They stand up an instance, they do their own coding for testings and purposes. Great. And how often do they go and close that, right? Sometimes it's not as accidental, it's not really malicious, right? So having that information there, we will know that somebody stand up the VM. And if it's public facing, we see that, right? So we can close that. So that's Expanse. We also have Prisma Cloud as well. That would probably also resolve that problem in a different fashion, right? Because cloud security, they will have reports, they will have compliance, right? All of those things, it will also come back. So yeah, definitely multiple ways to solve the problem.
Got it. So I've got another question here. We are currently using Palo Alto XDR along with next generation firewall. Is it possible to upgrade XDR to XIM?
Yes, yes. They're, XDR actually, this is great, right? So XDR is actually the only product that you can upgrade to it from XIM, even though XIM inherently has XSOAR, it has Expanse, right? It has a lot of other stuff. XDR is the only one that you can kind of upgrade because they share the same agent, and architecturally they're very similar. So it is upgradable. Now you might think that, hey, you know what? Maybe not, not for other people, right? Maybe they're not ready to consume XIM. They just, maybe they can do it in smaller chunks as well, right? So they can bring in, bring in like a security orchestration like XOR, right, to work alongside XDR first, and then later on upgrade to XIM. That's fine as well. But absolutely, XDR itself, with a license activation, you can turn on all the feature sets of XIM. You just have to go and tune it a little bit to make sure all the AI stuff, the automation works.
Awesome. And so we've got one last one here. I've seen the term precision AI mentioned in Palo Alto's marketing materials. You mentioned it here as well. Could you explain what precision AI is?
Yep. AI has it's a term that's been everybody's throwing that around, right? You see it all the time. It's it's definitely here and now, and not just the future, right? But precision AI, it's kind of the Palo term for our AI, right? So I look at it as there are three different forms of machine learning or AI or deep learning, right? So it looks at one is to look at structured data, right, to make a decision, kind of like how we do it in XDR, right? Statistically looking at this file, right? How is it compare based on data models and things, right, to make a decision. And then there is the deep neural learning type of stuff and that's looking at behaviors, right? Behaviors of certain users, how they behave over time. Did this guy log in, traditionally X, Y, and Z, during that hour, right? Or, does he always log in from certain geographic locations, IPs, right? Kind of mimics and look at what human brain does, right? And then this would detect, anomalies, unknown threats and things. And then there is the later one where it's generative AI, right? Kind of like ChatGPT, right? Kind of like a lot of, what Google comes back with when you search now, right? So it does a lot of unstructured data, right? But it can process that real quick and summarize and even create something for you if you wanted to, right? So all of those combined is what precision AI is.
And a lot of that user behavior analytic information feeds back into the first question about insider threat, right? So those are some of the things that will cover that insider threat use case. All right, cool. All right, that looks like that was the end of our questions. So I guess you can go into the demo.
Questions. Yep. Thanks for that. If there's more, feel free to populate it. So right now, I am going to give you guys a quick overview of what XIM looks like. From this is what they what the SOC guy sees on a on a daily basis, right? So I'm logged in. This is me, right? So logging in as on the console here, it recognizes me when I log in. So this is the dashboard that kind of shows, hey, this is what we're seeing now, right? So this is not the Palo environment. This is a demo environment, right? Because it would never be able to to let me see it. But this is the demo environment, kind of similar. This is a mature XIM environment, right? So there's a lot of data sources on the left-hand side. You'll see that, of course, next-gen firewall. There's Google Cloud, Azure, email security from Proofpoint, Okta. If I go in here, there's Apache as well. I can go dig a little bit deeper on all these data sources if if I want to. So they're feeding in a lot of events, right? Those events are stitched together into alerts, right? And from there, it maps out all the alerts. So kind of the middle center here, right? It's kind of that's XIM. That's all the all the automations, all the AIs, right? Correlating all this data into incidents, right? So these incidents are stories, and you'll see that a lot of these incidents are resolved automatically, right? And some of them are manual. So what that really means is that anything that's automated means it's been handled and completed by the machine itself, by XIM. The bottom pieces here are what the SOC analysts need to deal with, right? So the bottom here, there are 22 manual ones. Not that just because it's manual doesn't mean that it's not like half automated, right? Oftentimes, when they see an incident, right, or it's already pre-populated with a lot of threat data enrichments and things like that, right? So that's that over there. As far as, the gentleman that asked, XDR, right? So on the left-hand side here, we can see endpoints, right? So when you look at endpoints here, we will show that, there's a bunch of clients, machines, PCs, right? So these are the agent stuff here. But when we look at, instead of looking at agents, we can look at assets, right? So this asset inventory, this shows not only the assets that includes the endpoints with an agent, right? There's on-prem assets, but these are also domains, right? You'll see these expired, like Sears.com. Basically we pre-populate this, just for show, right? These belongs to expired and obsolete domains, so that we don't get sued to demo, right? So this is information gathered from our attack surface management tool Expanse, to get this information, their domains, their certificates, right? Anything that's associated with what I'm looking for gets pre-populated here. So pretty cool stuff. And then want to show you guys the marketplace, right? So marketplace, think of this as like APIs, how we ingest data, right? So out of the box, there are over 1,000 integrations, meaning if I need to pull and work with third-party solutions, right? Because I mentioned Proofpoint a few times here, so I'm going to prove in Proofpoints. Proofpoint. I can spell that. There it goes. So if I put in Proofpoints here, right? What this would do is that, I can install this content pack. It will basically be able to prompt me, this is the Proofpoint API. This is how you can log into it, right? Once I'm logged in and installed this this marketplace application, right now, XSIAM would populate it with data models, right? Things that I can parse, things that I can work with, right? Things that I can gather. So if I look at the parsing rule here, it will show that there's one parsing rule. Let me see if I can scoot to the right. There it goes. It won't let me move to the right on this UI. But I was going to show you, like the dot here. For some reason I can't scroll to the right, but that's okay. I'll go back to browse here. Maybe I'll find some other stuff, right? Like Slack. So I can integrate with Slack. So I can jump into here. So there are multiple playbooks that we can use with that. There are 3 integrations. Oh, there goes the commands, right? So with Slack, so this is a messaging type of product, right? So we can use the event collectors to get information about Slack himself. Slack also has an identity management piece as well. I don't think Palo used that, but it's there. There's also messaging and conference, right? So if I need to communicate with a user, instead of sending them email, right, I can Slack them. And depending on their response, I can respond in an automated fashion, right? So we can set up playbooks so that we can capture certain information and then validate it, right? So a lot of automation can be done within the marketplace here. So there are like over 1,000 applications that we can integrate with the marketplace. Marketplace is the easiest method to integrate with products. So 1,000, yeah, it's a lot, but it's not everything. So there will be times, especially legacy on-prem products like routers, switches, firewalls, and things, right, that spits out syslog. And you certainly don't want syslog, going over the internet, especially if it's not encrypted. So what we could do is set up it's a broker VM, right? It's a small applications that can deploy it on-prem, collect that data, right, and encrypt it and send it back to the XSIAM data lake as well. So there's a lot of options as far as how we pull in data. And then I want to show you an incident too, right? So let me move on to the right-hand side here, right? So this is an incident, right? So for example, a SOC analyst when they have something to review, this one actually they probably don't even need to see this. So this one is a detection of a of a portable AnyDesk, right? So that's kind of like a remote desktop type of application, right? So it's unsanctioned. Palo don't use this, right? So let automation take care of this, right? Because it's not malware, right? Let's go ahead and block this file, right? We're going to kill this process on this user's endpoint. And then since this user is kind of like a shadow IT guy, right, trying to do more than what they're supposed to on their laptop, right, we're going to put this user on the watch list. Maybe, once they put them on a watch list, their risk profile goes up, and maybe we can take some privileges away so that we won't let them install this in the future, right? So this can be all automated within this this playbook here, right? So probably there are multiple playbooks here, part of this work plan. And then here's another example, right? This one is GCP instance that was discovered by Prisma Cloud, our cloud security product itself. So sometimes, within organizations, right, maybe the SOC team doesn't have the privilege to go and shut down an instance on GCP, even though they have the capability, but it's against politics or whatever, right? So they would have to notify the cloud team to close it. So this can be automated, right? So this could be essentially a ServiceNow ticket to get this over to those guys and have it taken down, right? And this one here, right? So all those are automated. That's great, but the SOC team needs to do some work as well, right? So this one is a partially automated. This is a partially automated incident where it's bringing in sources from a lot of these correlations from next-gen firewall agents and things, right? What's really cool here is that every single alert is mapped to MITRE, right? So you see that based on the MITRE attack tactics and techniques, right? There's a bunch of alerts that hit these categories, and it maps it out for you. And then all the artifacts are listed here. Assets are here as well, and then users that are related to this incident, all presented in one single screen. And this is the very cool part about XSIAM, where there are already playbooks completed, but this is not a closed ticket, right? So the playbooks that were completed are, all the portable executables has been locally analyzed, right? And it also sent up to the cloud sandboxing environment, Wildfire, for detonation, right? To verify, is this benign, is this good or bad, right? So it looks like this one is bad. And then what it would do, so this is AI at work, where this is cool, right? We executed a couple of playbooks for you, but we also recommend this other playbook, right? So because this potentially could help you. So this is a malicious network operation type of thing. So if I click on that, it will show me once this loads, right? It provides a work plan of what it can do. So it's basically encouraging that I execute this playbook for similar attacks like these or similar incidents like these, where this is a command and scripting interpreter, right? Because attackers potentially could use this, so I can run this, or before I run this, I can click on this to see, what the automation playbook looks like, right? So this is the playbook, right? So like I said before, it's a lot of drag and drop type of stuff, right? A lot of basically it's like a flow chart of information. So I can run this playbook right now if I want, or I can add it so that next time something similar happens, it will kick in, right? So it won't even ask me again, right? So the recommendation stuff, it's really cool. Got about 10 minutes left. Let me speed this up a little bit. So going back to the last piece here, right? So there are a couple of new guys, right, over at the SOC because they move, people move out. We have one of their guys join our team, so they brought in new guys as well, right? So what I'm getting at is that we also have Copilot. This is a new feature that just came out a couple of months ago, right? Probably really beneficial, especially for newer folks who are newer to the XSIAM platform. So if I go into Copilot here and go on home, right? So the first thing you do is that the first thing that it would do, so this is AI, right? This is like kind of like Microsoft Copilot, kind of like ChatGPT, right? It will give me an overview over the last 24 hours. You got some incidents, ingesting X amount of data, all good stuff. But here, as a newer person, I can say, what, I'm fairly new to here. I'm not sure what a BIOC is, right? So you can do what is a BIOC, and then you can ask the help center, right? So what it would do is that it will search all the, knowledge bases, documents, right? This is like exactly like ChatGPT, where it would give you an answer with the summary. It would also potentially guess what you're going to ask next, right? Since you asked about, BILC, let me show you these links that may help you and guide you on how to create a BILC rule, right? And things like that. Now, if you have further questions, you can always, click on submit a support ticket. So that would integrate based on your login to XSIAM. It would create a support ticket. It also gives you the option to include everything that you ask Copilot about, right? So anything that you ask AI, right, it can automatically add that into the ticket. So when the support guy sees it, it knows that you have a history of like, you already asked this guy all this stuff. Maybe this is what you're getting at. You also have the option of like doing screenshots, capturing that, even capture like videos of how you can reproduce the problem so that once the support guy gets it, right, it saves a lot of time with back and forth asking all these questions, right? A lot of automation there are built in as well. So that's pretty cool. And Copilot also have the ability to do this as well. So let me look at this one here, right? So this one's cool here. This is malware, right? Docbark.exe, quasi client. So you can open that in Copilot, where any hash, any file, right? You can, just like a lot of EDR products, and it's built into XSIAM. But with this, you can put in a hash and you can generate a SQL query. So for people like me who are not really good in scripting, I know a little bit about SQL, but having the machine create an SQL query for me, and then I can go back and just modify, use this as a template to do other things. It's a lifesaver, right? It saves a lot of time, right? So this would actually create the query. I can run the query, directly from here as well, right? So I could do that. And then lastly, I can also use Copilot to do things like Sanchez, right? Because he is related to this. I can also do a query on Copilot as far as, who is this Sanchez guy? He showed up on a couple of instances, right? So this is a username. I can ask it to show me a little bit more about Sanchez. I can run queries on this guy, right? And now that I show me a little bit more, it shows me who this guy is and all the information about this person, right? So that is XSIAM. That's what I wanted to show you folks. And then from here, let's go back and kind of wrap this up. We got 5 minutes here, right? So, I mean, all in all, the XSIAM tool, right? It's really what transformed the Palo SOC over, over the last year. So this is, the upside down pyramid that we, show to our customers, and the Palo SOC show to us, and it's so impressive that we kind of take this and show it to our customers as well, right? So that it shows that it's, adjusting about 59 million log events every day. And then precision AI, ML, stitch all this stuff together, all the raw alerts and things, right? Down to 26,000, and then machine learning, all that stuff correlates, consolidates that into 75 alerts. And then a lot of it automated, right? 10 are completely end-to-end automated. There are some partial automations as well, but on average, there's about one incident that requires a SOC analyst to really step in, right, to do a full investigation, right, on like, on all of this stuff. So as of today, there are no major incidents ever since, they transformed the SOC using XSIAM, right? So nothing that requires, like disclosures and things like that. So knock on wood, I'm very, I'm very optimistic, but I'm nervous every time I say this because, being an engineer, nothing is impossible. But I truly believe that, we have a great SOC and they got some really awesome tools to support them. So we got 4 more minutes. Sorry, I took a little longer than I want. So we have a couple more minutes for questions.
No, that was all great stuff, Aaron. So I've been doing my best to answer DMs that have been coming to me. So one of them from Dan was, How does Palo Alto address 0 days? Well, I answered that one. Wildfire is Palo Alto's 0 day sandbox technology.
Mhm.
So that's how 0 day exploits are typically handled. They would get sent up to Wildfire from XDR or from XIAM or next generation firewall, whatever the tool may be. Um, and so I got some for you to answer because I don't have the answer to this first one. Given that XIM handles most of the threat detections, does that influence your hiring process at the SOC?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So yes, it does, right? It does tweak how they hire folks, right? Because they're no longer only hiring incident responders, right? That looks at incidents and things, right? So they are actually looking towards more hiring more and more automation and data analysis engineers, right? Versus incident responders, right? And of course, if they have skills of both, that's awesome. They would rather, get the SOC engineers and then teach them a little bit about, threat hunting so that they can move back and forth in a way, right? So absolutely, automation is key, right? So SOC engineers is what they're after for the most part.
So you're saying your kids should go out and become data scientists, not incident responders. Got it.
Yes, yes. If I have a choice, right? If they listen to me,
Yeah.
I would tell them to do that. I mean, the incident response, the bad guys, they're always cool. They always wear hoodies in the background, all that good stuff. But
Yeah.
the future to responding to those attacks are definitely robots and AI because we know bad guys are using AI
Yep.
to do analysis, finding their targets and whatnot.
And that's great. Thanks for that one. And we got one more. So we are currently using IBM QRadar,
Hmm.
which was recently acquired by Palo Alto. Is there a migration path from QRadar to Cortex XIM?
Yep, yep, absolutely. And the Palo learned a lot from the SOC on this one as well, right? Because before XIM, they were using Splunk and then Devo, right? And XIM itself, right, would basically replace that because it's a SIM. It adds on a lot of technologies from XDR, SOAR, attack surface management, expanse, all of that stuff. So the migration from QRadar would essentially be the same. It doesn't matter if it's QRadar or other traditional SIMs, right? We would kind of trying to figure out what detection rules, manual detection rules were created on QRadar, right? We would typically let XIM play a little bit and figure out, because out of the box there are like thousands of detection rules that usually covers majority of a lot of the manual rules that the QRadar guys probably created, right? And then fill in the blank and then translate those over to XIM over time. So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be an upgrade. That's far cry from saying that, but there is a migration process, and there's we also have pro services guys that can do that. Some of our partners have that capability as well.
Awesome. Okay. I think that was all of our questions.
Awesome. Good. Right on time.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Aaron. Thanks for everyone who was able to join the webinar. I hope you found it informative and maybe somewhat entertaining. Um, appreciate your time, Aaron, and appreciate everyone who joined us. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.